Many of my wife's family members have inherited and died of a certain type of cancer. We found out my wife has it now, but she's in the very early stages, so it's very treatable with an incredibly high chance of recovery. She said she refuses any sort of treatment, no matter how curable it is, even if she'll eventually die without it because she doesn't want to get extremely sick from the chemo. She won't talk to me, and I yelled at her that if she won't even try treatment for survival or even talking with me, I couldn't support her through this. She got angry, packed a bag, and now won't answer my calls. I've been married to my wife, Jenny, for 16 years now. We have 2 boys and a daughter. I don't want anyone we know to read this and recognize the medical history, so I'll be vague in my descriptions. A type of cancer runs through Jenny's family genetically and has killed many of her relatives, including her mother and one of her sisters. I don't know why, just bad luck, I suppose. Obviously, this is devastating for her, so she sees a therapist once every 2 weeks to cope. We're lucky enough to be financially well off, so we saved up money over time and used egg donors for our kids. Now they don't have the gene, and that's a big relief for both of us. Jenny usually regularly sees a doctor to see if C has a chance of being sick, but until now her scans have been clean. It all changed around a week ago. Jenny got a big promotion around 7 months ago, and we had to move to another state. She has a very high-paying job with long hours, so when we moved, we agreed that I'd stay at home to watch the kids and organize the house. Sometimes I do some online work while the kids are at school, but she's the breadwinner for the most part. It took a little while, but eventually we settled nicely into our new routine. I feel awful now, but between her working so many hours at the new job and me learning about being a stay-at-home spouse, the thought of getting a new regular doctor slipped our minds. Most of the women in her family get the cancer in their 30s, so I guess her age made us relax and stop worrying as much. Now it's my biggest regret. We were both so busy, we just kept on saying we'd do it later. A little over a week ago, she began to feel some mild symptoms that she assumed was just exhaustion or a simple cold. When they persisted, we finally took her to the ER. After the examination, it was devastating to learn she showed symptoms that suggested she had gotten cancer. She stated to hyperventilate at the news, and it took me and a nurse a few minutes to calm her down. The doctor told us to go to a larger nearby hospital, and we got an appointment as soon as possible. After a few tests, they confirmed that she does have cancer. Once we got there, it was torture waiting for them to finish all their observations and tests. I couldn't stop pacing around, and she just looked numb even when I tried to hold her hand. After everything was complete, the doctor sat us down and gave hopeful news. We had caught it much earlier than we suspected at first. He said after a few small treatments, she should be all right. He even said if it suddenly got worse, they'd just do a couple more aggressive treatments, and there'd still be a very high chance of survival. When I say very high, I mean around 90-95% chance of survival and recovery. He was explaining some treatments to us and giving some dates that she could start until she just cut in and said she wanted to go home. Both the doctor and I were shocked, but she just said she needed to think and would contact them soon. He reluctantly let us go, and we drove home. In the car, I said I loved her and tried to sound optimistic and say we're very lucky to have caught this early enough to have a real fighting chance, and that I'd support her the whole way. Almost all of her deceased family members caught it late, or had a type that was so aggressive there wasn't much they could do. Finally, she bluntly stated she wasn't doing any treatments. I thought she was joking at first, but she was dead serious. I begged her why, and she teared up saying she didn't want to spend the end of her life confined to a bed too sick to even speak with her kids. Many of her relatives, her mom and sister especially, were extremely miserable and in pain at the end of their lives due to the radiation and chemo. I told her how they had caught it too late and were labeled a terminal from the beginning, unlike her, and she had a much higher chance of survival without getting nearly as ill. She stated she didn't want to get her or the kids' hopes up. I'm not saying I want her to suffer just to die in pain anyways. I just wish she'd at least be open to trying some treatments first. If things went south and showed that the treatments were only giving her more pain rather than a cure, I'd fully support her in wanting to stop them and die peacefully. I'm scared if we don't treat this soon, the cancer might progress into something that would take a much more aggressive regimen of medications to treat. Those would definitely make her very ill and in pain compared to what the not-so-aggressive treatment options now would do. This came as such a surprise, I decided to give her the night to think and calm down. The next morning, she said the same thing. We haven't told the kids yet, and I have no idea what to do. The cancer is very treatable now, but if she does nothing, she'll most likely be dead in 4 years, maybe sooner. She won't listen to me and just insists on enjoying the end of her life. I'm so frustrated and sad because it doesn't have to be the end of her life. She's been avoiding me and refuses to sit down for a real conversation to discuss our feelings. I've pleaded with her several times to see a couples therapist together, even for just one session. Obviously, I'm very caught up in my own emotions right now, and I feel like a professional would help me express my thoughts in a way that would get my point across without causing more damage. She says her own therapist is good enough and agrees with her. She won't attend even a single couples counseling session. She yelled at me for stressing her out. I regret saying this now, but during that argument I yelled back that if she won't even talk to me, in depth, preferably with a therapist, about what she's thinking, I won't support her decision to just wait for death without even trying to live or at least work through things. This really set her off, and she called me all sorts of names and insults. I've never seen her this angry. It was so loud she woke up the kids by slamming doors. They came out to the hallway as she was shaving her clothes in a small suitcase. Of course, the kids were very confused. When they asked her what was wrong, she yelled that Daddy wants me to die alone and miserable because he can't man up and deal with his family by himself. 2 of the kids started to cry, but she just stormed out and went to her other sister's home. She blocked my phone, and when I tried to call her sister, she just said my wife needed some space for now. That was all the explanation I got before she blocked me as well. It's been a little while now, and I told the kids' mom was just stressed because she had some big work trip and would be home soon. This is all so devastating. I'm worried that now she thinks the only reason I'm so strong on this point is because I want her to stick around for the money. Of course that's not it. If she got sick enough to be bed-bound or needed some time to rest up in peace and quiet, I'd go back to work in a heartbeat and find care for the kids so she could rest. I just want her to stay with us because we all love her so much no matter what. I don't want my kids to lose their mother, and I don't want to lose my wife. I truly love her, and I regret lashing out like that. I'm terrified now she'll never speak to me again until she's already dead, but I just wish she would explain in more detail why she won't even give treatment a try. I feel like a selfish jerk now. I was so desperate and distressed at the thought of her dying, when there's a nearly 100% chance she'll live with the treatment, that I lashed out and only pushed her further away. My fear of losing her made me make the whole thing about myself, and I just want her to come home so I can tell her I'm sorry and ask for a second chance.